And let's get to to chapter 35. Chapter 35, we're going to talk about personalized bitachon. Just the choice of the title of the chapter is just so beautiful to me. Because again, I always say that bitachon is all about the relationship. This class is all about the relationship. And I think one of the main things that we have to keep in mind is that a relationship is a personal relationship, right? And the relationship that we have with our Father in heaven is personal, and He is with us on an individual basis. That is a Jewish concept. God is not just this like creator of the world that doesn't have time or capacity for my individual needs or issues. On the contrary, He wants a personal relationship, and so do we. So let's talk about this idea of personalized bitachon. And Rabbi Sutton here chose chapter 31 of Tehillim, and the verse 15 of that chapter that says, "But as of me, in you have I trusted, Hashem. I have said, you are my God," right? So it's very personal. I have trusted in you, and you are my God. Like, that's it. We are together. I've chosen you. You know, the Jewish people chose Hashem, right? We committed, we got married at Har Sinai, Mount Sinai. We are united with Hashem. So David HaMelech is here saying, I am with you. I trust you. You are my God. So let's see. David HaMelech is beset by enemies, right? We know this about David's life. He's surrounded by enemies. It might seem that his fate depends on their success or failure in their goal to destroy him, all right? It might seem like, okay, if he has this life where he's surrounded by enemies, then that whether they succeed or they fail in destroying him, that's really where his fate and his success lies. But here we're going to learn something different about David and his perspective. Here, Rabbi Sutton tells us that the Radak tells us that David doesn't worry about what they can do to him. He doesn't worry about whether they succeed, they fail in trapping him and doing this to that. Doesn't think of those things. He doesn't worry about what they can do to him. Why? Because he knows that you are my God. He has only one master to serve and only one judge who can determine his fate. In other words, going back to gate of trust, to the gate of trust, to the fundamentals. In chapter 3, when we learn, in chapter 2, when we learn the 7 trustworthy qualities, okay, we know that one of the 7 trustworthy qualities of an entity in whom we're going to put our trust, and for sure in Hashem, one of his 7 trustworthy qualities, and again, we have to have these, we have to know this, number 6 is that he is, exactly, chapter 2. Number 6 is that he's responsible to the point of, the word responsible doesn't even do it justice, but there's like a sovereignty. He has exclusive jurisdiction. And not only does it say it there, but throughout the book, he's going to say it time and time again. The concept that only God can harm me or benefit me. Not that God harms us, but meaning that, no, I shouldn't say only God. I mean, it really, what it says in the book is no one can do anything to me without God's permission, right? No one can harm me or benefit me without if it's not God's will. So nobody else has power. The only one who's, I'm on his hand, my fate is on his hands, is Hashem. Okay, so it's a very, very important quality. It's one of the trustworthy qualities. It's, and then we also have this concept in the gate of trust. When we talk about these 5, when we talk about in chapter 3, when we talk about the 5 conditions for trust to be conditioned, for real trust, we again review the 7 trustworthy qualities at the beginning of the chapter, and we end it off with this concept that encompasses all of the trustworthy qualities of Hashem, with the idea of causality, of God being the cause of all causes. Nobody can do anything. Nobody, no agent, no means, nobody has independent power. And those of us who've learned Hasidus together, we've talked about the fact that, again, there's nothing in creation that has an independent existence, right? The only independent existence, to speak in the language of Hasidus, is Hashem. Right? So Hashem is the only force in motion right here, even if it seems like everything else is a force in motion. Okay, so we have it on so many, we have this concept that we're discussing right here from Tehillim. We have it in the Shar Bitachon so many times. Again, trustworthy quality number 6, the responsibility of Hashem, the jurisdiction, the sole sovereignty of Hashem. Like I'm bound to him, like it says the analogy right there, that like a slave to his master. Only the master can feed the slave. That's it. There's nobody else who can come and feed who has any responsibility or jurisdiction over the slave, right? So that's that concept. And then again, we see it again when we understand that the first thing that has to be in place for bitachon to be bitachon, the first of those 5 things that have to be in place for bitachon to be real, is a deep understanding of this concept of causality, that God has these 7 trustworthy qualities, and therefore he is the only one who's doing anything, because he is the generous one, and he is the strong one, and he is the wise one, and he's the close one, and he's the attentive one, and he's the responsible one, and he's the extremely generous to the deserving and undeserving. It's obvious that he's the only one causing anything in my life and in anybody else's life, okay? And I can't accelerate anything, and I can't slow down anything if it's not God's will, and nobody can harm me or benefit me if it's not God's will. Okay, so David evidently has this very, very clear, as the Radak is telling us. He has only one master. He knows who's running the show, and he knows who's not running the show, and that is his enemies. Right? He might be surrounded by enemies, but he knows that his fate does not depend on the success or the failure of his enemies' strategies and plans and schemes. This is a key principle of the Chovos HaLevavos, Shar Bitachon, as we just explained. With Bitachon, we don't fear anyone. Very important, because of everything I just said. Because no one can harm us unless Hashem deems that this should happen. People's threats are meaningless. How beautiful. And that's the truth. People's threats are meaningless. They can't do anything. The Sefer Akedas Yitzhak clarifies further. David HaMelech realizes that he has no friend or ally who can help him. Also very important concept from the Shar Bitachon, right? We understand that from the Shar Bitachon, that healthy bitachon, and we learn about healthy bitachon, we learn about bitachon at work in chapter 5, right? That there's no codependency, that this person is not looking to anybody to help him, right? Nobody can help him. He's not looking into a relationship with another human in order to get something out of them. It's a very genuine, any relationship is extremely genuine, because he's not trying to get anything out of them. So when we talk about friendships or allies, there are genuine friendships or allies, because we know, yes, it's important to be in relationships. It's important to have allies. It's important to have positive, friendly relationships, but not because of what I need to get out of that person, because there's nothing that I could get out of that person, right? It's because of the human, who they are, and what we can accomplish together through this relationship, right? In the betterment of the world. That's the way we have to see it, okay? And I'm not making a political statement, but it's actually something that we can translate into politics, right? That is often missed. Okay, so he can rely only on Hashem's mercy. That's it. As the Akedas Yitzhak explains, when all of his abilities of ishtadlus, of effort, have failed, what's left? Just to cry to Hashem and pray, right? We know it. We have to do our effort, and we also have to trust in Hashem and pray. But we can't go to other places looking for the solution. We do go to them, but not because they have the solution. They might be a conduit to the solution. And so that's why we do it, because we have to do some effort to open some conduit, but without relying on those people, right? Or those people or those activities or companies or entities or whatever. If it works out that way, great. If it doesn't, also great, right? That's the emotional test, the litmus test of bitachon. Similarly, the Beis Halevi says, which also we've covered, for those of you who are new, I think we did it already twice, and it's in the YouTube channel, okay? So we have, I think, two series on the Beis Halevi. The essay on bitachon says, sometimes the gates of ishtadlus are closed. This can lead a person to despair. He has fulfilled his obligation to do ishtadlus, and his problem hasn't been resolved. Oof, and that is a big test in bitachon, right? The waiting. The waiting is a big, big part. We've talked about it so many times. It's such a big part of our service of Hashem, to being calm in that in-between stage. And that in-between stage of I'm doing or I've done, and I know with certainty that it's coming. Why? Because I'm completely reliant, because I have absolute bitachon that it is guaranteed. The result that's coming from Hashem is guaranteed. And I'm joyful in the waiting, even if I'm not seeing it right now, but I'm as excited. That is the real bitachon, being so joyful and excited as though the result was in my hands. As we often say, right? If you had a father who's a billionaire, you would be okay waiting for the check, because you know if your tati said, oh, of course, no problem, you need $300,000, no problem, right? It's coming in the mail in 3 days. What, those 3 days you're miserable? You have no doubt that your father, the billionaire, sent the $300,000 check, right? There's no doubt in your mind. Therefore, to you, it's a done deal. So you're not anxious those 3 days, right? That's the idea. So we are tested. We have to be in the waiting. Okay, but a person with bitachon is in the waiting, besimcha, and completely tranquil, right? The menuchas anefesh, he's completely at ease and peace of mind. Okay, so going back into the text, page 141, he has fulfilled his obligation to do his shtadlus, and his problem hasn't been resolved. Now he feels helpless, God forbid. But the Beis HaLevi says that this is not a situation for despair, because you have done everything you could do, so now you have the full right to rely completely on bitachon. Have to go, and all of us have to do that. We have to try our best to go all in our bitachon. And anytime we're faltering a little bit, we have to also catch ourselves, right? That's the good news, that by learning this, we can learn to catch ourselves and then redirect. No, don't go out of control, right? Like I was sharing with you that one time when I was in New York, and I got some not such good news, and I got very stressed, right? And I was like trying with myself to kind of redirect myself, right? Why? Because now we have the tools. At least, at least we have the tools to get ourselves back in check, rather than allowing our emotions, our fears to spiral out of control, etc. Okay. Okay. Okay, so now I have, okay. When further avenues of ishtadlus are open to us, we might worry that we're being lazy or haven't worked hard enough. However, when there is nothing left to do, all we have is our bitachon. That is what David HaMelech means when he says, in you have I trusted, Hashem, I have said you are my God. And in fact, if we're going to be purists here, which I think we should be, and we often try to be, we're really going to be purists, we should say, not that, however, when there's nothing to do, all we have is our bitachon, is that always, even when there is what to do, all we have really is our bitachon. In other words, according to the Shar Bitachon, okay, and according to the Beis HaLevi, and according to the Madragas HaAdam, and according to the Ramban, the effort is meaningless. We do it because Hashem asked us to serve him through natural means, right? So it's condition number 5 in the Shar Bitachon. But we only have bitachon. We don't have the ishtadlus. The ishtadlus is nothing. It's air. It's crazy, because it's like, what do you mean? But I have a business, and I have a company, and I have a job, and I have a boss, and I have employees, and I have clients. What do you mean? No. And then if we bring it back, like even from Chassidus, right? Again, the only independent existence is Hashem. Nothing else has power. Nothing else. Everything else is nothing, right? Everything else is creation. Oh, but we're supposed to engage with it. How crazy. It's such a paradox. Yes. Why? Because the CEO, the boss who runs this operation, who's Hashem, says, I need you there engaging with it. Why? Because he wants us to perfect the world. Because that's what he wants. We have no say in this. That's what he wants, and that's what we have to do, right? But it's not because this in and of itself gives us and we get anything out of it. We don't get anything out of it. It's a crazy thing, right? It's the paradox of bitachon. The only thing that a person has is actually his bitachon. He doesn't have a company. He doesn't have clients. He doesn't have his degree. It's nothing. It's completely meaningless. And I know for some of you, if you're new to this idea, it's like so radical. Like I was having another class that we have with my friend Margie. And it was a Bitachon class in Spanish. And again, and one of our friends is like, but this is so it's such a crazy concept. I keep struggling with this idea of Ishtatus not having any meaning. We were learning it inside in the Beis HaLevi. They actually made a translation in Spanish of the Beis HaLevi. And she said it goes counter everything that we learned all of our lives, right? All of our lives we learned, you go to school, you study hard for the test, you're going to get a good grade. You get a good grade, you're going to get a good degree in university. You're going to get a good degree in university, you're going to get a good job, you're going to make a lot of money, right? We follow this formula of the natural world, and we think this formula actually is a thing. It actually, and as Margie was explaining, right, if you have conditioned yourself to follow the formula and you only rely on the formula, you are bound by the formula. But a Jew is supposed to be above nature. We're not bound by nature. And this, mastering this, is what gets you out of that formula. And it's very important to get out of the formula. It's very important not to stay limited. Okay. And again, it's a very deep concept, but let's continue with what we're here to do with this chapter, personalized bitachon. Okay. So never too busy for me. Let's see what he says here. In this pasuk, David HaMelech refers to Hashem both as Hashem and Elokai. The word Hashem, spelled with a Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey, refers as the one who is, was, will be, right? And this, Havaya, the name Havaya, this expresses his identity as the constant presence that brings everything into being and who is the master of the universe, as opposed to the word Elohim, which is nature, is Hashem within nature. The Rambam paints a vivid image of this power. Okay, we're talking about the power of the name Havaya. The galaxies are sprawled out over seemingly infinite expanses, and each contains billions of massive stars and planets orbiting and spinning in an orderly dance through space. All of this is powered by who? Hashem, moment by moment, every millisecond. And yet, he intercedes in the individual lives of each of us. What a crazy concept. The same creator who allows all the planets and the orbits and the ants and the animals and the rocks and the trees and all of the intricacies of creation, he also, right, is interceding in your particular life. Like this is the concept of Hashgacha Pratis that introduced the Baal Shem Tov, introduced to the world. He has the raw power, meaning the concept existed before, but the way it was understood, okay, it was slightly different. There was hashgacha for man, not for animals. Others thought it was hashgacha for the Jews. Hashgacha means supervision. By the Baal Shem Tov, we understood that there's hashgacha in it was a hashgacha in certain situations, but there's hashgacha, there's supervision in every single thing that happens. He has all, including all of creation, not just mankind, not just Jews for sure, everything, the leaves, the ant, everything, single thing of creation, a rock, a raindrop, everything. So it's very important to understand, and maybe we'll go over it a little bit more in depth on some other occasion, okay? And yet, so Hashem is involved in every aspect of your life, individual. Okay, it's hashgacha pratit. It means pratit means individual, right? We're talking about individual supervision. He has all the raw power, and along with it, all the wisdom, mercy, and kindness to bestow on us. Again, we go back to those 7 trustworthy qualities. The first one being mercy. Right? He's my loving, caring father. That's number 1. The 7th one, it's very beautiful. It's like the bookends, right? The beginning is, the first quality is he's loving, and caring, and merciful. And the last one is he's extremely generous to the deserving and undeserving, right? And in between, we get attentive, and we get strong, and we get wise, and we get close, and we get responsible, right? It's an unbelievable idea. So we're talking here about the divine providence. We're talking here about the idea that Hashem is Sovev Kol Almim, like he surrounds the whole world, like he creates the whole world, he enlivens it, but he's also Memalik Kol Almim. We discussed this one time when we learned Parak 41 of Tanya. Right? He also fills the worlds, but it's not just only that he fills the worlds, is that he is involved in every aspect of your creation. So these are very, very important concepts that a person needs to live with on a daily basis. Recognizing this, David HaMelech says, you are my God. So remember when we learned Parak 41 of Tanya, we were saying this idea, how crazy it is that the same God who is Memalek Kol Amim, who surrounds the world, I mean, Sovev Kol Amim, and who is Memalek Kol Amim, who feels that he is the king of this whole enterprise, and yet he stands in front of me, watching me, right? And you come to this realization, you say, wow, this is crazy. The king cares about what I do. The king cares about how I am fulfilling my God-given mission in this world. He's there, he's supervising, he's helping me along, he's giving me the life, the strength, the koach, the everything, so that I can do it, and it's meaningful to him. My contribution is actually meaningful to the creator of the world. I mean, it's absolutely revolutionary, right? Talk about living with mission and living with meaning. Exactly what people are lacking nowadays. That actually, when a person is able to live with that, that is a life of meaning, right? This is what we need to internalize every single day. And then actually, we even talked about the fact that this is where the true simcha of a person comes from. How could you not be happy and filled with joy when you realize that it is so meaningful, that it is so important to the king and master of the world? It's a radical concept. So to those of you who weren't with us there, again, the class is on YouTube, and chapter 41 of Tanya, the first part of chapter 41 is a very nice thing to learn and to study. I mean, to study and to internalize. Okay, so going back to the text. So recognizing this, David HaMelech says, "You are my God," right? Again, this means there is only me. He relates to Hashem as if he is the only person whose life Hashem supervises. It's an amazing thing. It's not an arrogant concept. It's a concept of closeness. I have such a, it's like when you're a mother of multiple, I happen to be an only child, right? So I grew up thinking I'm the center of the world, right? But I have many children, Baruch Hashem, I have more than one child. Hopefully, I would hope that my children feel there is, for my mommy and tati, there is me, right? There is only me. Right? We love each child, like they're their own. And my husband and I often say about like these little people, if they only knew what a big place they hold in our lives, right? They're just young people, but to us, it takes so much like mental real estate and spiritual and emotional. Like we hold them as these because they do. Because each of them has such big meaning, right? These are really my husband's words. It's a beautiful concept. And he often says that they're such little people. If they only knew they hold such a big place in our lives, right? And those words are sometimes limiting, right? You can't, it puts, obviously, when you take it from the thought to the speech, it's limited, right? It's beyond that they take a big piece of our life. They're your everything. On a certain level, they are your everything, right? When you tell your child, "I love you more than life itself," like I love you more than anything, it is the truth, right? And it's not just one of your children; it's each and every one of your children. It's an incredible thing. So David HaMelech feels like he is Hashem's only child, right? And that's how we need to feel. And that's what the Lubavitch Rebbe said. There's one beautiful letter. I think it was a girl who was dealing with depression. I have to find the letter for you guys, but and in this particular letter, but it may have been said several other times. So the Rebbe said that we have to understand that Hashem loves each and every one of us like an only child born to his parents at an older age. So imagine when you have years and years of waiting for a child, and the Rebbe said, and that is only because we don't have the words to properly convey the love that Hashem has for each and every one of us. So the language is limiting, but if we could put some words, like a pretty close analogy is that you are an only child, and not just that you're an only child, but you're an only child that your parents waited and waited and waited for you for many, many, many years to have, right? And then the Rebbe says, and that's because we don't even have the language to explain the love, right? You can imagine what that kind of love must be like, right? But it's still very limited because we don't really can put in words the love that Hashem has for each and every one of us. And here David HaMelech is saying, yes, there is only me. There's only me. Like your kids say, you only love me, right? You only love me, right? And yeah, they should feel like we only love the one child, right? Even though we love them all infinitely, right? There's only me. He relates to Hashem as if he is the only person whose life Hashem supervises. It is a one-on-one relationship with the master of the universe. So again, all of this is bitachon, right? A person needs to feel, Hashem, you're with me, you love me. It's a one-on-one relationship. I can rely on you, even though I'm little old me, right? There's another beautiful letter about, I think it was a Jew in Curacao, I think, wrote to the Rebbe. Now I'm forgetting the details. And then I think he says something, maybe at the end, he says something like, I'm just a small Jew in Curacao. And the Rebbe gives him the answer for whatever it is. And he refuted, and he said, there's no such thing as a small Jew, right? Because again, Hashem, and maybe he continued, I can't remember. I'll try to find the letter, but there's no such concept because the master of the universe cares about each and every one of us like an only child, again, born to his parents in old age. This is a message similar to that of Adon Olam, when we describe Hashem's immense power and say, Vehu Keli, he is my God. So every morning when we say Adon Olam, we can maybe, those of you who say it, have that in mind when we say it. Really, I am Hashem's only child. So I'm going to skip here the beginning of the story, and I'm going to move to page 142 to the end, where he says on the words Vehu Keli, he is my God. Each person in his tefillah says, I have a personal relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He is my personal God. Therefore, whenever a person says the word Adoni, my master, no matter how small he thinks he is averring that he is in direct contact with Hashem. When you are standing in prayer, right, you have to go with the mindset that you are having a one-on-one conversation with the King of Kings. Okay, this thought is in the introduction to any individual's Iyun Tefillah, concentration of prayer, right? This is how we need to think. There is nothing mystical or supernatural about it. It's just matter of fact. It should be the most natural thing in the world. Just like it's natural for your child to feel like he is the one most important thing in the world, which he is. Right? It's natural for a child to feel like that about his parent, right? That's the way it needs to be. So the same way, there's nothing crazy or supernatural or mystical about this. This is the way you stand in prayer, knowing with certainty that you matter to Hashem like an only child. This is a one-on-one relationship. It's not, oh, he listens to Sherry more than he listens to me, and he listens to Yocheved. But no. What? It's everybody. We're all like, here I'm standing, it's me and you, Hashem, okay? Rav Hirsch didn't just convey this idea as an inspiring Torah concept, he lived it, and Rav Yosef Breyer bore witness to this. Okay, so he says a beautiful story that Rav Ephraim Wachsman related the following. When Rav Rohr was asked to share his memories of his illustrious grandfather, he recalled watching his grandfather recite Adon Olam one morning. So again, giving you a little inspiration for when you say it tomorrow in Shacharis. He said it line by line, slowly, and with immense concentration, translating each passage in German. Adon Olam, Hashem is master over the world. Asher malach b'terem kol yatzir nivra. He has been king even before anything was created. Vehu haya, vehu oveh. He always existed. He exists now, and he will always exist. When Rav Hirsch came to the words Vehu keli vechai goali, and he is my God and my eternal Redeemer, he was overcome by emotion and shouted the words loudly and emphatically. He proclaimed, he is my God. He is my God, the great, awesome Hashem. He is my God, the great, awesome Hashem. He is mine. He's my eternal Redeemer. Crazy concept, but it's right at the beginning of prayer. Like we literally, like it's right there. It's mamash the beginning of prayer right after brachos. Okay, that's how we begin, with this consciousness of who we're talking to. It's my God, right? It's my tati. It's my, like the baby said, no, it's my mommy, right? The baby isn't my mommy. You can take my mommy. It's my mommy, right? That's the same idea. This is a feeling of closeness and security we can cultivate simply by noticing the Hashgacha practice in our lives. It doesn't have to be a miracle worthy of headlines, but it can be remarkable nevertheless. And I think we're all in this class, we know it, right? They don't have to be like Hashem split the sea for us. But these instances are so, so, so powerful. So this is a story I'm not going to share. What I will share is another story actually that recently happened. It was very, very funny. My husband was going away on a trip. And again, we have so many of these stories, and maybe if you guys want to share if something happened this week, a cute ashkacha brought this moment. And I think I've had others before this one. This happened a few weeks ago, but I actually made a note here to myself to remember this story. Okay, so I put it in the book, Matt and the Shoe Polisher. So basically, it's a story. We had gone to a funeral. It was always the day of the hurricane. So the hurricane was on a Monday in Houston, and on Sunday we had gone to a funeral. For some reason, my husband was wearing his dress shoes, and it was pouring buckets of rain at the funeral because I guess already the hurricane had sort of started or whatever. And he needed to leave the next day to a really important meeting. His shoes were destroyed, and it was his only dress shoes. So he thinks in his mind on Monday he's going to go to the mall, and he's going to find another pair of shoes. Well, Yocheved, you know what the mall was like. There was no mall happening on Monday, right? Who's getting to a mall? So he's such an optimist. He even tried to drive out of the house. He didn't make it half the block. We're in the middle of a hurricane, my friend, okay? Right? I mean, he's still in his mind, he's getting on the plane, which by the way, he did, even though it got put shoved. Okay, whatever. It's a whole big story. But anyway, well, it is kind of part of the story. Okay, so now he doesn't have shoes. So what is he gonna do? So he says maybe Tavia's gonna find him a pair of shoes in New York from his nephew. And I said, that's just crazy. That's just crazy. I said, Matt, just take the shoes. You know what? I'm gonna clean the shoes. I'm gonna try to do my best, and we'll see what happens. So I start cleaning the shoes. Yeah, I'm not such a shoe cleaner person. I didn't have the right polish and the right anything. I call my mother, Ma, the shoes, what do I do? You know, thank God for mothers, right? And she's like giving me tips, you know, you take a little cream and I don't know what, if you don't have the shoe polish, and I'm there getting the mud out of the thing. I'm not doing such a great job, but I'm trying my best so that at least it could be, you know, passable. Like we say in Spanish, pasable, no? And I don't know why I have this thought as I'm doing this. Again, these things happen like in a split second. I said, you know what? In the olden days, it used to be that they had these shoe shiners, these shoe polishers in the airports. That's exactly what my husband needs. Yeah, okay. And I said, Chaval, because in the airport that he's flying to, in a hobby airport, I've never seen one of these people. They don't, I said, okay, yeah, it doesn't happen anymore. What a shame. And I'm telling you now the longer story, but you realize that it happens in a millisecond, right? And I'm there shining the thing. Okay, I said, Matt, it's pretty decent. Just take it and we'll see what happens. Okay, so, because first he wasn't going to take it. He was going to bother his sister. And then I said, don't bother your sister with this. This is nonsense. You have to figure it out. Just take the shoes. And if you're really desperate, then, okay, fine. He listened to me, took the shoes. The whole story is he comes back to the house. He said, I just came back from the airport. Back. Why are you back? I thought you were going to the airport because the flight was canceled. Now, what do I do? Okay, so fine. So they find him another flight. They send him through another city. So he goes to another city to take a 15-hour flight in order to get to New York, which is a crazy story. But he goes to another city. Hours later, he sends me a picture. Oh, I have to email it to you guys. It's so cute because it's such a good reminder. He sends me a picture of his shoes in the platform of the shoe polish, you know, the shoe polish guy. He says, look, my shoes are getting shined. I said, I can't believe it. He didn't even know that I had this size of mud. You won't believe. I had this thought, if Matt only could, you know, find like in the olden days a shoe polishing station in the thing. And he had his shoes shine, and it was wonderful. And it was such a sweet guy. And it was, I don't think inflation hit this man. It was like $9. I said, what happened to inflation? This poor guy, I hope you give him a big tip. He's like, yeah, I gave him like $20 or something. You know, like, it was like, oh my gosh, crazy. So anyway, so we have to remember all these little kindnesses of Hashem all the time. And in fact, I'm going to tell you right here, Rabbi Sutton has the Beis HaLevi. He also put together, I put it upside down, the Beis HaLevi book. And in one of the appendixes, and I only remember because we again discussed it the other day in Margie's class, but in one of the appendixes in page 127, he gives such a nice suggestion about this. Well, first, I'm going to tell you what it says, and then we'll talk about the suggestion. He says, noticing Hashem's guiding hand in one's life. Throughout one's life, there are many circumstances where one can clearly see how he is being guided by divine providence. Again, Ashkacha Pratis, personal God, right? This is my God. It's pratit. It is individualized. Rabbi Shlomo Wolbe, once said that anyone who focuses on the events that transpired in his life can write a personal Megillas Esther based on the experiences in his life where Hashem's presence was evident. And the truth is, we're very, very honest. We could write such a book, but we don't. By focusing on these moments, one will begin to notice Hashem's involvement in his life more and more, even in challenging times when his hand is not so evident. Because again, it's a sensitivity. It's a sensitivity that you develop in your eyes to be able to see the hand of Hashem. And going back to before I say the suggestion that he brings here, going back to the gate of trust, in the introduction of the gate of trust, he says very, very clearly, I should actually read it inside because it is so incredibly powerful. How when a person places his trust, here it is, introduction. Literally, it's like a few lines in. It's way at the beginning of the Sefer. If a person places his trust in something other than God, he says it in the negative, but we'll explain it in the positive here. If a person places his trust in something other than God, then God removes his divine providence from him and leaves him in the hands of the entity in which he placed his trust. A very, very deep concept, very, very important to understand. And of course, as we've said many times, it's not like Hashem leaves you because Hashem can't leave you. Hashem's ashgacha is completely creating the world. There's a concept of constant creation. Okay, so he doesn't leave. He could, he doesn't. Okay, it's that he remains concealed from you. So there's levels of supervision. There's supervision that has more concealment, and there's supervision that has more revelation. And so when a person, now explaining it in the positive, when a person relies on Hashem, we live in a reality of revelation. There's a lot more revelation. So this is why it's a sensitivity that we develop, right? We develop a sensitivity to start to trusting Hashem, to seeing Hashem in our lives, and to relying that he is real, that he's there with me, and that he cares, and that he's going to deliver. And so he continues here, the Beis HaLevi saying, not the Beis HaLevi, but the appendix, that Rabbi Yecheskel Levinstein's daughter, listen to this beautiful thing, okay? Rebbetzin Zlata Ginsburg recalled that although her father did not generally buy lavish gifts for his children, there was one thing for which he gave generous rewards. He once handed her and her sister notebooks and told them to write down every time they saw Hashem's providence, promising to reward them for every entry. What a powerful lesson in education, right? And to give her the tools. So if really, it's such a beautiful idea to have, now they make such beautiful journals, to have a beautiful journal where you literally, when these little things, they're not little, they're actually humongous, right? But they don't have to be splitting the Red Sea, okay? They're these personal instances where you see revelation in your life, where you see, oh, Hashem just winked at me from above. He's right here. Like, this is not coincidence. We can't chalk it to coincidence. We Jews don't chalk things to coincidence. There are no coincidences, right? We jot it down so that we can etch in our memory, right, that Hashem is real. Like I told you, this influencer on Instagram has this whole line of clothing. Hashem is legit, right? So it helps us cement it. So anybody who's struggling with their belief or their trust, right? It's just such an important exercise, you know. And I always tell people, if you can write it, and if you can call your sister, and you can share it with your friends, and share it at your Shabbos table, and encourage your guests to share at your Shabbos table, all these little things that happen throughout your week, where you can see a glimmer of Hashem's hand, you're cementing in your memory, in your brain, the evidence that he is legit, that he is real, because the whole world around you, right? And there's decades in your life of conditioning to think, as this girl was telling in the other classes, she says, but I always thought it was a shtatlus, right? Of decades of conditioning that everything around me, if I do A, B, C, it's real. This concept of Hashem being the only one in charge is like such a foreign concept. But if you start internalizing how Hashem is so involved and intricately in the details of your life, it makes it so much real to really, really feel that he's trustworthy, right? To really give validity in your head to those 7 trustworthy qualities, and therefore to put reliance on him. So in 1984, Rav Moshe Feinstein and Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky issued a letter stating, translated from the original Hebrew, as any thoughtful person will understand, it is very important in these times, okay, this is 1984, imagine all the more so now, in these times to instill the belief that Hashem watches personally over the life of each individual. Again, the Rebbe said that Ashkacha Pratis, that divine providence, is the bedrock of Bitachon. Literally, those are the words. Because, and it's true. Okay, so it's very important. This is especially critical when educating our youngsters, because this is a pillar that upholds our entire belief system. A good strategy for reinforcing this faith is to keep a notebook chronicling any situation in which a person sees and feels Hashem's direct supervision in matters of our daily life. So again, it would be a beautiful idea to get ourselves a journal and jot these things down. Okay, so again, going back to our chapter, a recap of our chapter, David HaMelech didn't fear his enemies. Why? Because he knew that Hashem alone could determine his fate. Not that could, that would. The only one who's determining his fate. When we run out of avenues of ishtadlus, we shouldn't despair, because at that point, we're in the ideal position to rely completely on Hashem. And we clarified that really, if we want to be purists, it's not when we run out of avenues of ishtadlus, we then lean on bitachon. It's even when there's ishtadlus, it's all the way. We are doing the ishtadlus because we have to serve Hashem. It's one of the conditions for bitachon to be bitachon, but then it's bitachon, right? It's bitachon. It's I'm all in on my bitachon as I'm doing the ishtadlus. Oh, and for most of us, when we run out of avenues of ishtadlus, we kind of like, we have to double up because we're human, right? But we have to understand that the goal is that even when we have the avenues of ishtadlus, we are not married to those. We're completely reliant and dependent on Hashem. Hashem has all the power. He keeps his vast universe spinning moment by moment, right? Continuous creation, as it explains in Chassidus. Nevertheless, he is fully engaged and connected with each of us and our lives. Build your bitachon for large challenges by building your awareness of Hashem's constant involvement in your life. Look for the small miracles. Again, I cannot stress how important this is. And I quote my friend Sherry here, like she says, for very, very hard moments in her life, that she now realizes in hindsight, Hashem prepared a mattress for me to fall into so that I wouldn't crash. But I often tell her, yeah, Hashem prepared it, but you opened yourself to that. You really cemented that Hashem is with you. And that was you also preparing the mattress, right? So this is really very important. We should all have a friend that we share these stories with, like Sherry and I do. We should have a journal where we write the stories. We should communicate to our children. We should make it a part of our children's lives so that they also develop the sensitivity to see Hashem in their lives, okay? All right, so now in the 15 minutes that we have, let's do chapter 36 on courage, which is also very, very beautiful. And here he's going into Tehillim 31, verse 25. Okay, so be strong and let your hearts take courage, all who wait longingly for Hashem. Okay, so be strong and let your hearts take courage, all who wait longingly for Hashem. So he's talking, David HaMelech is talking in the plural. For those who might be losing hope, David HaMelech has a heartening message. They should take courage, but what in the middle of their difficult, maybe even desperate situation can give them courage? Where does the courage come from, right? And this is very relevant to the Jewish people today. We have to have courage. Where can they find it? Rashi explains that David wants people to use his life, David's own life, as an example. He wants us to, again, David gave us such a treasure, right? Tehillim is such a treasure. Every human emotion is there. He's giving us a treasure of use my life and you will find Hashem in your life. Things can be very, very difficult. And yet he tells us, God saved me and he can save you too. And not only that he can save you too, in the words of Bitachon, he will save you, right? That is the ultimate level of Bitachon, where you know he will save you. And where you're on a level of the relationship at that point, it's irrelevant what the result is, as we've discussed with the 10th level bitachon. You just want the relationship. So, I mean, it's a very high level, but let's go back to this. So the first step, though, is the one that we take ourselves. Okay. The first step is the one we take ourselves. That is, be strong. So it says, Chisku, be strong. That's how the pasuk begins. That's how the verse begins. Radak says that Chisku, be strong, tells us that once we pull ourselves out of worry and panic, Hashem will give us the courage we need to go forward. It's really very interesting because we need to we also need to do things to help ourselves, right? This is why we learn this, or this is why we're going to write down in the journal. We have to do things. The first step is for us to strengthen ourselves, whether it be through the journal. I had a conversation on the podcast. I made a 2-part series on financial anxiety, and I was speaking to Ruth Devorah Wallen, a therapist. She's not a financial therapist. She's a therapist, and she leans on the work of Bitachon. In fact, one of her core principles is one of the things that people need to do at night is to learn one of the letters of the Lubavitcher Rebbe on Bitachon, or learn from the Sefer, the Shara Bitachon, or any Sefer of Bitachon. Right? It's a big pillar of her work with her clients of clinical work, including Bitachon into the procedures that they have to do. So she was also telling us in the podcast that not only is it about the learning about Bitachon, but one of the things that the Rebbe asked that should be done, and she did at the request of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, is that psychologists like her would create a parv neutral kosher meditation that didn't involve anything from any religions, any bings and dongs and you know what, all the things that they incorporate. It had to be completely neutral and clean, right? And I asked her, because I always thought, come on, but our meditation is our davening. Isn't that my meditation? When I sit with the Hebrew text and I should be meditating on this greatness of Hashem. And she said, no. For the Rebbe, this is a medical thing. It was clinical. When a person's head is spinning out of control, you can't even daven properly. Before the person even opens the siddur, you have to give them a medical tool that they can come to calm. They can calm their nervous system. So this is where the breath work and the kosher part of meditation comes in. You have to get the body to calm down, the mind to calm down, to open the space so that you can carry forward with, even now when you say the words, you can actually do it with meaning. Otherwise, you're just reciting some words and you're not connecting to anything you're saying, right? So it's very interesting. So it reminded me of this, that the first step is what we have to do it ourselves. We have to look for the strength. We have to take the proper tools wherever we're holding, right, to give us that space, right, that we can then move forward. And that takes, that's what he's saying here. Once we pull ourselves out of worry and panic, which is what she tries to achieve with her patients through the neutral meditation, Hashem will give us the courage that we need to go forward, because then now we can enter in a conversation with the Creator. Then we can go to the relationship. But if I'm out of control, what relationship are you talking to me about, right? There's no, right? So we need to calm it down. So that's one example that came to mind here. And then now he says something really, really interesting. He says, we see that courage is different from strength, which I hadn't really thought about too much until I read it here. Strength ebbs and flows. Sometimes we can forge ahead and sometimes we need to regroup. And we all know it. Sometimes we feel very, very, very strong and we can carry forward. And it is normal. There are ebbs and flows. We have to regroup and we have to recharge. And even the regrouping and even the recharging of strength of the battery actually takes courage, right? Sometimes it's courageous to take a step back and regrouping, right? According to the Malbim, omets, courage is a trait that is consistent. So whereas the strength, which is the first step of the verse, right? Chizku ve'yametz. First is chizku. You have to start ourselves. We have to strengthen ourselves, whether it be through, again, the journaling, the going on a walk in nature, the breath work, the kosher part of meditation, whatever it is, we have to strengthen ourselves, right? We're sleeping, again, because the strength ebbs and flows, sleeping properly, eating properly, all these things to give us the strength, right? But then the courage, he says, is something that's constant in a Jew, okay? And that's the second step in the pasuk. He says that Ruth, okay, personifies this trait. And he says, Reb Wolbe says that in Megillas Ruth, when Naomi decides to return to Israel after many years in Moab, and he's talking about courage in particular, but she exemplifies courage, she tells her widowed daughters-in-law, Ruth and Orpah, okay, everybody knows the story. Naomi tells Ruth and Orpah that they should stay. They don't have to go with her back to Eretz Israel. She doesn't want them to miss their opportunity to remarry and have families of their own again. And both women cry, but only Orpah agrees to leave Naomi, and Ruth decides that she's staying with Naomi. Despite Naomi's continued insistence that she leave, Ruth insists on staying. She says, I am with you in everything that you do, and describes the depth of her commitment. And then the verse tells us that Naomi sees that Ruth was being courageous, mitametzet, from the word ometz, and she courageous, and she relents, vetelachna shetehem, and the two of them went on. The Torah equates Ruth, who has just committed herself to the Jewish people, to Naomi, who has served Hashem all of her life. They went together. One who's courageous in her and just committed, just started her, like literally started her journey. She made the commitment to be a Jew for the rest of her life. And Naomi, who's always been committed. So the insight here is that the Torah is saying it's the same thing. Because the truth is, if we have an understanding that it really takes a lot of courage to be a Jew. And today we can say it takes a lot of courage to be a Jew, to stand proud as a Jew and go against the grain, right? And we never thought that we'd be like tested in this way, but now we see that we have to actually be very, very courageous to be openly and proud Jews, okay? But even if it's not that we have to be openly and proud, just the courage to live your life in a way that is completely counterculture already takes a tremendous amount of courage and like Ruth demonstrated commitment, right? That commitment that I have the courage to do this. This is the power of ometz, of courage. As the Sefer, sorry, one second. As the Sefer Shem Mishmuel says, everything depends on this. Courage opens all gates. One extra push of ometz enabled the former Moabite princess, Ruth, to become the grandmother of Mashiach. So again, it's rooted in courage. It's all redemption, right? Mashiach is rooted in this quality of courage of the ancestor of Mashiach. And if we think about it, it's such a redemptive quality, right? To even look at the world, like the Rebbe told us so many times, you have to look at the world like with Mashiach eyes, to see this world as not a world that is a disaster and it's everything, to see it with redemption eyes. My next column I'll share with you guys when it comes out is all about the fact that there's a survey out there that they asked people a couple of years ago, and I'm sure they run it again, it'll be the same, where they asked people if the state of the world is, if the world is going worse or better than in the past, right? Did your grandparents have it better or worse? And 65% of Americans say that the world is headed in a bad direction, that life today is worse than our grandparents and grandparents. And the objective factual truth is that it's not, that the world is moving in a better direction. Now, it's very difficult because if we get sucked in by the news and everything that's going on, we lose sight of the bigger picture, right? We see very myopic what is going to us, we're living through right now, and it's extremely disheartening. We might think, oh my gosh, and we use words. We say the world is upside down, the world is crazy. It is true. It's upside down and it's crazy. However, if we zoom out, we see that the upside down and the craziness, it's a blip on the map, because really when we start tracking all the predictions of what's going to happen when Mashiach comes, we see that in the long term of history, we're literally getting closer to everything that has been predicted. It's something, when we look at the medical advances, the technological advances, the amount of food that we have, the variety of food, the fact that you have, it talks in Isaiah, it talks about the lame and the mute will speak, the deaf will hear, the lame will walk. Well, you have Paralympics of people with disability. You literally have people walking, like literally the predictions. You have now these incredible surgeries. I was doing research on it, where people who can't speak now actually can speak. They can communicate. There's all this technology. We have all these brain surgeries and implants in the ear to allow people to hear. I mean, crazy things, not to talk about the abundance of food that also I think Zechariah talks about, or Isaiah talks about, and the Rambam mentions as well, right? When he recaps all the prophecies. We talk, I mean, a lot of it, when you look at history, and the interesting thing is also in the secular world, this has nothing to do with Judaism. In the secular world, there's a few organizations that, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the names of some of them. I have to email them to you, but their whole purpose, these are economic data, people who gather statistics and data, okay? Economists who gather data, their whole purpose is to give people factual data so that they see that the world is actually moving into a better place. It's crazy. And they show you how the poverty level has decreased over the years, and the infant mortality rate, and it's crazy, right? So we see it as, oh my gosh, terrorism is on the rise, but really we see like disarmament is actually lower, and we see that people's even consciousness about war is completely different, right? When we think about so years ago, war, and Alexander, all these I'm blanking out now, but all these kingdoms and just this conquest of land. I mean, now we still have it in a certain level, but it's just the attitude is against this type of thing, right? So in general, when we look at all these different pieces of history, and we again look at them on a macro level historically, and we don't just look at this year, right? And we zoom out and look at the historical patterns, we're like, whoa, it's true. The world is moving to a better place. The level of education, girls getting educated, people healing. I mean, it's unbelievable. Okay. It's really, really unbelievable. So it'll be interesting. I'll share the column when it comes out. But how did we get there? Oh, we got there because it takes courage, right? Oh, because we got there because we're saying courage, it's such a quality of redemption, right? And I was sharing with you the fact that it takes, the Rebbe wanted us to look at the world like that, with this positivity bias, and to really see that amidst the darkness, this map that our prophets laid out for us, this vision is actually happen. But you know what? It takes courage for us to recognize that, and to not only recognize it, but commit to it. Meaning we don't say this to be complacent. We say it to stay committed to the mission of bringing the world to perfection. Because the truth is that the Alter Rebbe says in chapter 26 of Tanya, that if we just succumb to the news and the issues of the day, we become slow, despondent, we lose energy, and we now can't do the fight. We cannot honor the commitment. We don't have the strength and the courage to continue to take the world to that perfection. So it's actually counterproductive. So it's really, really important for a Jew to really zoom out and see, woof, the world is moving, and now recommit to making it happen. But if we despair and we only look at the moment, and then we're going to get anxious, and we're going to get despaired, and we're going to get despondent, then automatically we lose momentum, we lose commitment and strength to continue on that mission. Okay, so it's really, really important. So again, the whole concept of bringing the world to redemption takes a tremendous amount of courage to say, wow, we are doing this no matter what. And even if there's this war and this terrorism and this, again, it's not that we're naive and saying that the world is perfect now. No. There's things that we need to correct. But yet I have the courage to go out and correct them. Why? Because I know where we're headed. I know it not just because the Nevi'im told me, the prophets told them, but because I'm even seeing it with my own eyes. That's what the Rebbe wanted us to see it with our own eyes. Mashiach is happening. We have to see it. So it's again, both things. We have to trust that the words of the Torah is true, that what Hashem set out for the world is happening and will happen. It will happen. And we know that right now it is happening. Okay. We have to see it with our own eyes that it's happening. So that takes courage. Okay, so this says the Shem Mishmol can encourage us whenever we want to overcome obstacles. Oh, I'm already out of time, whether external or internal. If Hashem came through in an instant for Rus, who had only just become committed to him, surely he will come through for those of us who have been struggling and striving all of our lives to grow in our Emunah Bitachon. Countless gates can open for us. Rab Wolbe adds that this pasuk relates to the words of the Rosh Hashanah Tefillos. Praiseworthy is the man who does not forget you, and the son of the man, or the man, you can translate it either way, ben Adam, who takes courage, yisametz, in you. The Sefer Haredim says that his Rebbe used to sing this phrase all year, and it urges us never to forget Hashem, to hold on to him. The end of the Tefillah and Rosh Hashanah explains why. Why do you hold on to him? Why do you not lose courage? Because it says, for those who seek you will never stumble, nor will those who take refuge in you ever be humiliated. We say this on Rosh Hashanah because courage is the secret to our protection. If we strengthen ourselves to the point at which Hashem gives us courage, we can be as fearless as Ruth, who left everything behind to become part of the Jewish people. From there, the gates of Yeshua, of salvation, fly open. And I would say here, even though Rabbi Sutton says fearless as Ruth, I would say not fearless. I would say courageous as Ruth, because really courage is not really the absence of fear. Courage is moving despite the fear, right? We can be afraid, and we need to push, like the Beis Halevi taught us. We can't let that fear. It might be a natural reaction. We might be afraid right now of, like, the anti-Semites and the this and the that, but we're not letting that fear stop us, because we know the bigger mission, because we know the plan, because we trust in Hashem, and we know Hashem told us where we're headed. We're headed to redemption. We're headed to Geula, and that gives us the momentum to keep moving forward despite the fear, right? And pushes the fear away, and we continue courageously. Okay, so David HaMelech tells us that when we see how Hashem has saved him from so many troubles and dangers, we should be filled with courage. So again, he wants us to look at his life. Radak says that when we strengthen ourselves, Hashem supplies us with courage. When Ruth took the courageous step of following Naomi, she opened the gates to Mashiach. So again, it takes courage to believe in Mashiach, to live a Mashiach reality, to open our eyes to see redemption, to go against the grain. And then he finishes it with this, try it. When you face something about which you can say, I can't, try to tell yourself instead, I can, and Hashem will help me, right? Or I can because Hashem will help me, right? Or I can because Hashem is helping me, right? Hashem is helping me. He is helping me. He will continue to help me, right? And I can do this. Oh, the only reason I can do it is because I have Hashem, not because I have any power or any strength of my own, but because I have Hashem helping me and sustaining me constantly. Okay, any questions or any comments? No, we're good? Okay, amazing, ladies. Good to see everybody. Thank you for coming, and I will see you, God willing. Have a good Shabbos, and I'll see you next week.